You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
Welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As today, your Indiana Hoosiers defeated IU-Edwardsville 80-61 to move to 1-0 on the record. A good season opener for Indiana that saw a lot of positive things, also some things to work on. The game was an interesting game. Indiana jumps out early. Great offensive rebounding, great effort defensively on the glass as well, getting Indiana off to a good start. At the first 8 minutes, they were up 19-9, and then it kind of took a lull. There were some subs that came in, didn't maintain that effort early in the game, and the game got tied at 27-27. You could hear the whole fandom of Indiana start gasping, but then Mgbako happened, which he happened all night long, but he hits a big three, then he gets a nice off-the-ball steal, goes down in an and-one opportunity, and that gave Indiana a little bit of breathing room, and then some good defense at the end of the half, and Indiana leads by 12, 42-30. Second half, kind of the same thing. Lead got up to 17-18, worked its way back down to 9 or 8, and then eventually Indiana pulls out to the 80-61 victory, where we will definitely talk about Mgbako's play tonight. I thought it was obviously his best game as an Indiana Hoosier, and a game that he needed to score, and he put Indiana on his back. I'm your host, Coach Brian Tonsoni. I'm here with Ryan Phillips, Andy Bottoms, producer man Eddie behind the scenes on the ones and twos, and we're going to break it all down for you on this Assembly Call IU post-game show. But let's start the show the way we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. That's me.
Coach and I are still figuring it out, much like the IU offense.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Banner moment tonight is simply Mackenzie Mgbako's play, especially when the game was tied 27-27. He makes a great shot, and then defensively, Mgbako's really good off the ball, or good enough off the ball. He struggled a little bit on the ball defense, but he makes a big steal. And when you could just feel a little bit of pressure coming onto the Indiana Hoosiers, that young man in his second year here in Bloomington made two really big plays. And then I thought also in the second half there was a key offensive rebound, a nice little back cut by Mgbako. So when the game got back under 10, he was a key contributor to Indiana spreading the game out to an 80-61 advantage. So to me, the banner moment was his play overall was outstanding, but I think in some key moments he really stepped up and was the difference today for Indiana Hoosiers in their opening game. Our banner moment today, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Homefield Apparel, now in our 8th season sponsoring the Assembly Call, and the 4th as presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network.
Homefield Apparel, wear one for the team.
Homefield has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere, and since IU is their flagship school, you know more high-quality gear with unique IU logos from past is always right around the corner. Recently, they re-released their famous 9-Windiana shirt on the way to the Tonsoni household, as well as some new designs celebrating Kurt Signetti for this year's IU Hoosier football team. There's no better way to celebrate anything positive or negative or anything Indiana than getting a fresh new Homefield Apparel shirt. They also recently launched the Campus Classic pullovers, which I see all over Bloomington tailgates. They're carefully recreated windbreaker-style pullovers from the late 80s and 90s that ooze nostalgia and comfort. They've released a bunch of schools already. More on the way, and it's a reminder that Homefield is always a great one-stop shop once the holidays come to get gifts for everyone on your list. Celebrating a birthday here soon. Mom sent me money, went right to Homefield. So should you. But no matter what you buy from Home Field, you know it will be comfortable and the colors will last. So go to homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay, now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Andy, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the 80-61 victory by the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, I think, as you said, kind of what you would expect from a season opener. I think a lot of things to be excited about and to build on, and some things you can nitpick in terms of the way that they performed. I think in a lot of ways just look like a team who has a lot of new pieces and is still trying to figure out how they all fit together. And guys, you could just tell they just don't have that in-game familiarity quite yet, knowing where each other's going to be, and just some of the communication type things on both ends of the floor. Some of the passes on offense and switching at times on defense, and just that kind of communication, which I think is to be expected to a certain extent, given all the pieces that IU has. But certainly reasons to be excited. The talent that we know is on the team showed up in some big spots, as you talked about. Mgbako, the clear bright spot for him, and just was able to affect the game in a variety of ways offensively. And they made a great point on the broadcast. I think it was when Galloway hit a three. At that point, the defense was so concerned about Mgbako that he goes and makes a cut, and everybody follows him and leaves somebody wide open. So just kind of shows the gravity of having a guy that's scoring and playing that well as he was, the impact that can really have. So I think a good start to the season. Wasn't a nail biter like what we saw last season. Could maybe quibble with wanting to win by a few more points here for the metrics, but certainly a solid start, and I think a lot to build on. And I think you hope in a season like this, given the roster makeup and all those things, you look back at this game as a starting point, but one that you've made a lot of progress from by the time you get into late January and February, about working out some of the kinks of what we saw tonight.
Ryan, your thoughts on what you saw tonight from your Indiana Hoosiers?
Yeah, it's a 19-point win in the opening game with a lot of new players. You feel good about that on the surface. I think there are a lot of cracks that showed, but again, I want to stress that it's early. We're critiquing this game for what it is. We're not making big announcements about the program or the roster, whatever. It just, for tonight, you saw some cracks that you hope, as Andy said, get fixed as this team gets used to each other. 16 offensive rebounds allowed against what's going to be, as Andy told us before the show, it's one of the worst teams you're going to play. And so that's got to get better for when you play the good teams. Defensively, a lot of guys just kind of caught ball watching and getting beaten, and this game was more competitive than it needed to be for a long time. Again, first game of the season, things are going to be sloppy. The defense was sloppy. Offensively, at times, guys kind of got out of their shoes. A lot of positive performances that we saw. Mgbako, I'm sure we'll talk about him even more like you did in the opening, Coach. Fantastic. Just a completely different player than last year at this time. Just so confident in his offense. Looked outstanding. And I think we can say Indiana's got a point guard, finally, that we can rely on. Miles Rice was fantastic. He only got 11 points, but just across the board doing everything he can. And there were some other bright spots. Just think that we need to, in these next few games, you want to see progress on where the cracks are. It's not as much score 90 points next time or whatever. It's showing that you can improve the defense slowly, showing that you can allow fewer rebounds, that you can hit more shots, that you can do X, do Y, do Z, and look smoother, because Atlantis might seem far away right now, but it's coming up, and they're going to need to win games in that. And remember, these early games are what kept Indiana out of the tournament last year. Close games against bad teams and big losses against good teams. They got a solid win tonight. It's below where the metrics said they should be, but it's a solid win, not a close game. They need to continue to build on that and make these even less close as it goes, because these little things are what contribute to your seeding. And we saw it last year, and it'll be the case this year. I mean, it can make the difference between a 4 and a 5. It can make the difference between the bubble and not being on the bubble. Either way, you've got to take care of business. I thought they did tonight, but there's little things you've got to see fixed as you move forward.
Let's turn to Mgbako, because obviously he was the story of the night. Ryan, I'll come right back to you. What did you see from him tonight that allowed him to get, 31 points did he end up with? and just 9 rebounds. And I just thought that was his best effort that I've seen in an Indiana uniform. But what particular did you see out of him tonight that allowed him to be so successful?
I mean, obviously he's been working in the offseason, but it's just confidence. I mean, he like last year he came in as a very highly touted 5-star, and you saw him hit the floor, and it was like he was starting over. You know, everybody else is faster, they're more athletic, all those things. But it looked like his confidence just plummeted. You saw it starting to build at the end of the year, and he wound up, having a great finish to the season. But he's clearly built on that even more. He's not starting over this year. He has had that confidence build. He's stepping into threes. He's driving authoritatively. Even, on defense, a little bit off ball. He's looking a little bit more aware. He got beat one time backdoor that was real bad, but again, first game of the year. But I just think it's the way he's carrying himself. He looks like it. I know I'm not giving you an answer that's like, look at his shot and look at this. No, but just the way he is carrying himself, he expects to do this. And that was so evident tonight. And that's exactly what you want of a guy who is a 5-star, highly touted, thought to potentially be a one and done, coming back and building on that and becoming the guy that we thought he might be as a freshman, now as a sophomore, and maybe even surpassing that. I mean, this is a guy who he has the confidence of an all Big Ten player. I know it's, again, one game, but you see him come out and just be in attack mode and get the ball in the wing. And if nothing's there, oh, wait, I can shoot this and I can make it, and nailing a three. Just a completely different player from a mentality standpoint. And honestly, the skill and the talent was always there. It's just a matter of him believing in it.
Yeah, I think for me with him, a couple small things that I noticed. He got a putback for his first bucket, made a baseline jumper for his second, and then maybe the next possession or a couple possessions later, he kind of silly foul, walked up under a guy as he's turning around, taking a tough shot. And I think sometimes those were like the small mistakes that he would make, and then things would start to spiral a little bit from it, particularly early in the season, not as much later. But he basically comes right back down the other end. I think gets a kick out pass from Rice on a drive, hits a three. As a play in the second half, he dives on the floor for a loose ball, ends up creating a turnover because the guy could never really pick it up. So I think you see those little things and the ability to kind of move on quickly to the next play and not dwell on a bad play for him. I think is just a sign of growth and maturity on that side of things. I think the other thing is he was able to score in a bunch of different ways. He got some putbacks. He scored on cuts to the basket. He hit some threes, hit one, maybe two mid-range jump shots. And I think for a guy who's going to clearly play sometime at the 3, sometime at the 4, he's going to have to do things differently and find different ways to impact the game from those different positions based on who's guarding him. When he's got threes guarding him, that's when he can really crash the boards, use some of the rebounding that we saw as the season went on last year, as we saw tonight, be able to get some of those putbacks. And then as he's playing the 4, it's a little bit more of the stepping out and drawing guys away from the basket and being able to do those things. So I think that
exactly what we've been asking for.
Yeah. I mean, like the versatility he showed is what he's going to need. He's going to need to pick his spots and adjust how he's playing based on who's guarding him. And I think seeing him do those things tonight, in addition to some of those little things, is a great step and a great debut for him as a sophomore.
Indiana has a guy who can get buckets, and you got to win games when your offense is struggling or not yet up to speed, or you're just having a tough. Can he get buckets? And then you got to run some things on that. Before I come back to you, Ryan, I just want to mention too, I liked his effort, short of that back cut where he got caught ball watching. But no
the
one's
camera
perfect.
was right on him too.
I just got burned on that. But his effort rebounding. Two-handed rebounding, attacking the rebound. I don't think Indiana rebounded well, and I know other guys got numbers, but there's a difference between a guy who gets numbers and doesn't have a good effort rebounding and a guy who has good numbers and his effort is good. And I thought Mgbako's effort defensively, he had a nice block in the first half, helping off the ball on a drive. Those are the things that I think when we saw last year, when he was at his best, he was locked in multiple facets of basketball, not just scoring. Right. And that is good to see. And then just like everything in the Indiana program, can it be consistent? You think with a summer of growth with his talent that it'll be more consistent than not. Ryan, you had one more thing on Mgbako.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned they finally have a wing scorer, and that's something that Indiana's been looking for years. When you combine that with also having a point guard, Indiana has two of the elements you need to go and not necessarily win a national championship, but make a deep run. You have some post guys who can do stuff too. But the thing that the program has been missing is a consistent point guard / good guard play and a wing who can score effectively and in many different ways. They have both of those things now. And so when you're looking at the ceiling of this team, if Mgbako is this guy night in and night out, it changes the dynamic for what this program is right now. And you got Ballo, who obviously work in progress offensively, I think we could all say today. But you've got Malik Renew, who can also go get buckets. And then you've got Cannon Carlisle, who scored a decent chunk last year for Stanford. Didn't score tonight, but you expect him to be better. You just have a lot of different elements. And so I think that we're going to grade this team on a higher curve this year because those elements are in place. So where you're going to expect more from them than you would have last year or 2 years ago or whatever it was. So I just think that Mbako's development, along with having a guy like Rice, who seems to have slid in immediately and taken a leadership role and taken the point guard role, really changes the dynamic for Indiana, not just this season, but as a program, in that you finally have the elements they've been missing.
Let's talk about one of those elements, guard play as a whole, from the three guys who got the majority of the minutes. That's Rice, Carlisle, and Galloway tonight. Their contribution, Andy, I thought was fantastic, and they each one did it a little differently. Rice had a little turnover problems, but was able to play some solid defense in the pace. I thought Indiana's pace was good for the most part, and he was responsible for that. Carlisle didn't score, but gets 6 rebounds and 3 assists and plays some incredible defense, one of the best defensive stances I've seen in a long time, let alone in the first. And then Galloway, obviously not back to normal because he just doesn't look like the Trey Galloway that we're used to coming back off the injury, ends up with 9 assists in 17 minutes. So, again, 2 things. Point guard element, the guards, and then depth, I think, has shown as a positive coming out of tonight's game. Andy, your thoughts on the guard play tonight?
Yeah, I agree. They each brought something different to the table. I thought Rice just was a little bit over-amped at the beginning of the game. I think 2 or 3 of his turnovers came really early. I believe he only had 1 in the second half. I thought he did a better job of settling in, and I think he's trying to figure out the right balance in terms of wanting to push the pace, but also being smart about doing that. And so I thought he got better as that went along, and he had a really nice spurt toward the beginning of the second half. I think in the kind of between the under 16 and the under 12, I think he scored 7 points, got a 3, got to the rim, got fouled, kind of did a little bit of everything in that stretch. So I think he's going to, continue to work his way into that. Thought he played some good defense as well. Carlisle's defense toward the end of the first half, particularly as Mgbako was out of the game, because I worried a little bit, they'd had gotten tied. Mgbako scored a few points in a row. I think he scored 6 in a row, and then he got a second foul and went out. And they ended up extending that lead in part because the defense during that part of the game was as good as it was in the rest of it. And that really started with the pressure that Carlisle was putting on the ball. He was giving me like moderate Chris Reynolds flashbacks and, kind of getting his butt down in a stance defensively. It reminded me of that. And so I think he's still trying to figure out how he can impact the game with this team offensively on a team that doesn't need him to do the things that Stanford asked him to do a year ago. But in the meantime, while he gets that sorted out, if he continues to play defense that way and rebound that way, had a really nice outlet to Rice after one of the rebounds that led to a layup. So if he continues to do those things, I think they'll be able to figure out ways to accentuate what he does well in offense and get him a little more comfortable on that end. But it's a pretty big change for him in terms of how much he's got the ball in his hands, how much of the load he's really being asked to carry on that end. So I think that's just an adjustment period with him. And with Galloway, there were some ups and downs. There were, he's got that breakaway layup and kind of just loses control of the ball. And I think somebody was, at the game tweeted, like you could tell he was kind of frustrated with himself at different times, just not being able to do things. But once he and Ballo really got things rolling on the ball screen, he got him 8 points in the last probably 5 minutes of the game by, throwing lobs and making some really nice passes to him. Had the great dish to Mgbako when he made the back cut. So I think he did a lot of those things. And I think you see him, there were times he was the initiator and was the point guard, but we talked so much last year and really the last couple of years of, his best role is maybe being a secondary creator and not having so much on his plate. And I think you saw, some of what he can do in that kind of role tonight. but I thought made smart plays, picked his spots well, hit the three there, managed to fit in a floater off an offensive rebound, and so did a little bit of what you see. And I think clearly a guy's still shaking off some of the rust, but I think you've got three guys who really bring different things to the table that you can mix and match, and that's exciting given the complete lack of guard depth that we saw a year ago.
And something I thought was really key that you said is sometimes when people transfer in and had really good stats at another school and then they're combined, they got to fit into a new role, because sometimes people can be volume shooters and get 16, 17 points, like Carlisle maybe, and now he's trying to figure out and change. He's not going to get as many shots with Mgbako and Renew and Balo as he did on a Stanford team that he came from. So I think that's something to watch, his maturity. But what you like about that tonight is that he didn't let not scoring affect him on rebounding and defending. And those are the little things that really help a team win basketball games, is when someone didn't let that play affect him. And a guy who scored a lot last year, not scoring at all, could kind of hang his head. You didn't see that from the Carlisle kid. I think that's really good. Ryan, guard play. What you thought? What are your thoughts? Dude, you're muted. Or
there I am.
Oh man, I was like, this has been our dream for years. Where
it didn't want to.
It's not the muting. You're just talking. There's nothing anyone can do about it, and
the mic did not want to hear my point.
Speaking into the void. But here we are. You figured it out.
No, it was good to see Trey back, and I agree with you on Carlo. He's affecting the game, a lot, given not putting any points on the board. I mean, he had 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, a steal. He was involved, and despite not scoring, his shot, he took a 3, and I immediately texted you guys, and I was like, oh no, like that's the next shot we've got to fix, is Carlisle's 3-point shot. But yeah, no, I thought that they all played, they all brought something different, as Andy said. And I think that Carlisle will get up to speed and find his role in this team. And the more he plays, the more comfortable he gets. And with Trey, he's just got to get the minutes to feel more well-rounded in his performance. But 9 assists in 17 minutes is pretty dang great.
No team ever plays perfectly, especially in any game, but especially early in the season. And Ryan, you mentioned earlier there were some cracks that need to be filled in, or quickly maybe before we get to where we're going. What things were something that we as fans need to watch that you think Indiana really needs to pay attention to this week in practice before Sunday's game?
I just think that as a whole, I mean, we mentioned offensive, the other team's offensive rebounding. So defensive rebounding has to be better. I think the ball movement a little bit, they got caught up in doing a lot of driving and not moving the ball as much. I think that's something. And I think the last thing is that we need to pay attention to in the next couple games is minutes. And tonight, and there's a couple reasons why it was probably high tonight. One, these guys haven't played together a lot, need to be on the floor together to gel. 2, you're chasing that margin of victory late. You have to get that up and beef that up. But, Miles Rice played 31 minutes, Malik Renew 28, Carlisle 25, Balo 28, Mgbako 28. And then your bench guys, Gabe Cup's only got 4 minutes, Tucker 15, Trey Galloway 17, Langdon Hatton 2, Luke Goody got 20. But you want to see those starters' minutes lower because you're putting a lot of distance between you and the other team. Get that bench involved, give them the experience they need, so when you need to call on them in Big Ten play, they're there. Again, opening game, you want to win by a lot. You want to establish something with that first team, but keep an eye on the minutes as we move forward. In some of these games, you want these guys to not top 25 minutes, the starters. You don't want them topping that. And so several did tonight, and it's just worth noticing because Mike Woodson loves to leave his starters in. He comes from that NBA mindset, wants to leave the starters in. And I think that needs to change this year to get these guys experience.
And somewhat to Coach Woodson's defense on that is like they went to an all-sub second unit, and that's when the game kind of the momentum kind of got lost. And we've always been on him for the hockey subs too. So it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't. But the overall message is perfect. Like, you want to play well enough at about the 6-7 minute mark where you don't have to play your starters into the last minute down the stretch for injury, for all that in these games, because you're going to maybe need them to play these 28 minutes, against Purdue, Michigan State, and so forth. You want to maybe conserve that over the long season. So I agree with you. I just pointed out that, again, you want to get off to a better start. He understands that, and maybe that was there. Andy, cracks. Ryan mentioned that there's cracks in the game, as there are in any performance early on. What are some things you think that we need to watch for an improvement Sunday and then beyond early in the season?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of reading through some of of Woodson's comments after the game. Offensively, he talked about ball wasn't really moving, players weren't moving enough in that area, and not in the same way they have in practice. Talked about the blocking out and the offensive rebounds that they gave up. I think that's the biggest one. And said, a lot of the turnovers are correctable, and trying to figure out how to, figure out when to push the pace and when not to. So I think some of the stuff that we've touched on already. I think the other thing defensively, as we look at it, is really trying to figure out how. I don't want to say how to play a defense around Ballo, but there was a little bit of that, right? Like he's not going to get out, although they did have him hedge once, and he did a great job of getting back and being able to deflect the pass. But generally speaking, they were having him kind of drop, and there were guys who would struggle to fight over the screens, and SIU-Edwardsville was really putting his man as the screener a lot and trying to figure out, kind of use that against IU in terms of the way that he was there. So he's a different kind of big than what we've had the last couple of years with Khalil Ware and with TJD. So I think IU has to figure out, he can be a good rim protector, but trying to figure out how to play defense around him, what they were doing switching wise and things like that. I thought there was times they got driven, but it felt like when they really were focused on defense, it was really solid. That stretch at the end of the first half, I know I mentioned that earlier, like that was really good. There were stretches of really, really good defense. And so I think it's just kind of maintaining that focus and trying to figure some of those things out. But I think a lot of it, I think the rebounding was probably the biggest thing defensively that I would say. And I think offensively, I think his comments about ball movement were there. It just felt like there was a couple times in the first half where it was like they returned to their factory default setting and dumped the ball inside and stood around so they could watch and see what would happen. And sometimes that worked. Malik had some nice moves in there and things like that. But I think that's, what we'd seen through the Tennessee exhibition and the Marion exhibition is they weren't doing that quite as much, and they kind of got back into that a little bit. And I think that's where some of that player movement and ball movement that he talked about got a little bit more stagnant. But again, I think some of that's first game of the year stuff that doesn't necessarily last.
All right, coming up as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's victory over SIU-Edwardsville, we will point out meaningful moments that you might have missed. We'll go inside the numbers, highlight some of the most important stats from the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm your host, Coach Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms, Ryan Phillips, and producer man Eddie behind the scenes, organizing everything. We appreciate his work. But now it's time for today's meaningful moment you might have missed.
Meaningful moments that you might have missed.
I'm going to go back to something Andy brought up there in the previous segment about the drop coverage and the ball screen, and something that SIU-Edwardsville did. I think that was very, very effective. They were putting Mgbako in that ball screen with Ballo. The other guards put great pressure on the ball, and you see Rice fighting over the screen and making the ball handler a little bit miserable when he's going over ball screens. I think that's something that's been an emphasis. You saw Carlisle do it. You saw Galloway do it. But when they had to switch, when Indiana switched in 1 through 4, Mgbako's going to play the third guard who can come off ball screens. And when they switch, if he's on the 4, he can be in a guy from the opponent that can switch or go off that ball screen. So they were really doing a good job of getting Mgbako on a guy that they wanted to come off the ball screen with the drop coverage, and Mgbako had a little bit of lack of ball pressure. This is where I said earlier in the opening that I think Mgbako off the ball was pretty good other than that one time he was ball watching. On the ball, he gets driven quite a bit right now, and that's just a point of emphasis for the young man. But he's got to have better ball pressure when his man's using a ball screen because that combination of Mgbako and Balo defensively was what Andy was talking about that needs to be better. So that's something, again, that coaches see. They look for those mismatches. They look for how they can take advantage of certain defenders. And I thought SIU-Edwardsville did a good job in that. Andy, do you have a moment that you want to share?
Yeah, we haven't talked a lot about Malik Renew. I thought he played really well. I talked about worrying a little bit as Mgbako went out toward the end of the first half. I thought Renew was a really big part of them being able to extend the lead. He hit 5 out of 6 from the free throw line during that stretch, had a nice, he kind of got beat, but was able to block it and blocked it soft enough that I think it was Carlisle ran it down inbounds. And so I thought he had a really good stretch there when they needed somebody to step up because, really to that point, I think Mgbako had probably 2/3 of the points. And so Renew had a good finish to the half there. So I thought he had some, I thought he had some moments. He was up and down a little bit, thought he took some contested shots, struggled a little bit when he was at the 5 defensively. And so I think that's going to be something else to watch over the course of the season. But thought he had some good moments, particularly late that first half that helped IU get the lead up to where it ended up being at halftime. And, a game where he, scored relatively well. He ends up with 15 points, but it's kind of like a quiet 15 points in some ways, but had 15.7 rebounds. Did end up with 4 fouls. Again, as we think about stuff to keep an eye on, he had a bunch of those late. But I think he picked up almost all the fouls he had when he was playing the 5. So just something to watch in that regard.
And the last one that I was going to say, if I can find it on I thought there was a really nice set. I know this is IU postgame show, but I thought SIU did a nice job flare screening and slipping against IU switches. So that's something that Coach Woodson's going to get on film and talk about his guys getting under that flare screen is on the wing. And so, again, those are adjustments. That's what's good about getting games on film, your 2 exhibitions and this game here, to try to get those things ironed out before teams can really take advantage of them. But I thought that was really good action there. The meaningful moment was brought to you by our friends at the Hoosier Ticket Project, where they help individuals and families experience Indiana University athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, visit HoosierTicketProject.org. That's HoosierTicketProject.org. Now it's time to go inside the numbers. And our Inside the Numbers segment is brought to you by Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. If you live in Bloomington or the surrounding areas and you want your taxes done right, contact our friend and Chat Mob Hall of Famer Megan Mahaffey and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334 or by visiting jacksonhewitt.com. Okay, fellas, who wants to talk stats first?
Ryan can go first.
Yeah,
there we go.
I think that, they took 16 threes. I think we'd like to see that number a little higher, but made 6 of them, 37.5%. The percentage is where we want it. You just need to take more. But Mgbako hit 4 out of the 5 of those. Only, Galloway hit 1 and Miles Rice hit 1. Nobody else got 1. Renew took only 1 and didn't look great. Carlisle took 3. They didn't look great. Tucker took 2. I like his shot, but they were off. So I think that they need to find a way to balance that out. Luke Goody 0 for 2. He's got to start making them. That's why he's here. Yeah, I mean, it's great, the family story and family history and all of that, but he's here to make threes. So he's got to get going on those. Didn't do well in the exhibition season. Needs to pick that up moving forward. But I think that stood out to me the most is they did hit 37.5%, but they only took 16. You want to see that number up around 24, something like that, 25. And they were getting up and down a lot, so maybe that negated some of it, but they got to start making those.
I think one thing for me is I think they look a little more free in taking them. I still think there's
I
more
would agree.
spots for them to take it, but it looks like they've been given a little more green light because some of them, like you said, maybe were 50-50 whether they were a good wide open shot or whatever else. But you have to take some questionable shots in order to take enough good shots, and you got to have that freedom. Yeah.
They're not all going to be wide open.
Yeah, looks like a little bit of Rod Wilmot in Tucker, I would say. He came in firing, although he got yanked pretty soon after he took kind of a quick three in the second half. I will say with him, they had him play in the 4, but they also had him play in the 2 at times where he was essentially the 2 guard there. So I think some interesting flexibility that he gives them, but wonder if a message wasn't being sent a little bit after one of the threes that he took in the second half, because he didn't play much after that. But if you want to look at positive shooting numbers, 14-17 from the free throw line, I think everybody will be happy with that. Although only got to the line twice in the second half, made both of those, so I think that was a positive number. 23 points off turnovers was good. Did have the 16 turnovers, 9 in the first half, 7 in the second. So I think that again speaks to trying to figure out pacing of how fast they want to play and trying to balance that out. So on the team side, that was there. Did end up with 18 assists, so at least got that number. More assists than turnovers. That's a positive. I think Galloway, they owe a lot of that to Galloway with the assists that he racked up there at the end.
Yeah, he had 9 of the 18 assists, and so everybody else only had 9. But 18 assists on 30 makes. You want it to be a little, that's in the range of what you want. But again, 9 of them came from one guy. So that's your starters only had 9 between them. So you want to see that number go up as well.
Not only that, they came in the last 2.5 minutes, three or four of them. And so they were underwater assist to turnover for a majority of the game. And the number you brought up on made baskets, you want to have more assists. And that goes back to, Coach Woodson talking about maybe the ball wasn't moving and all those kinds of things. So, that is a number there. For me, I just Mgbako 13-17 efficient shooting, 4 for 5 for 3. He just looks very confident. Ryan, you said that earlier, and I think that's an important number. I always like the points per possession, 1.14 for Indiana. Probably needs to be better, quite a bit better. The defensive points per possession, 0.847, is acceptable. I do think there are some cracks in the defense where SIU just missed some shots that better teams are going to hit. So I think there's some room to shore that up. But those metrics are okay to start season, a heck of a lot better than the first 2 games last year. Any other numbers that you guys need to mention here tonight? Yeah.
One more note on Galloway, because I think he's going to be very important to this team, especially as the season goes on. But in 17 minutes, I thought the ball moved when he was playing, and we've seen that before. Plus 17 in 17 minutes. And again, I know that stat can be wonky, but I didn't feel wonky with him on the floor tonight. It looked like he was really helping move things and help the team be better. Made both of his shots, hit a 3, 1 for 2 from the free throw line. Want to see him clean that up. But the 9 assists in 17 minutes, he was the driving force of the offense for a lot of time he was in there. So that plus 17 in 17 minutes feels real.
I think that's an excellent point. He just looked like the old Galloway, but a little bit slower, kind of like when you graduate college and go start playing, at the Y. You don't play as fast as you can, but he's coming back from that injury. But it was good to see him out there because when he does Trey Galloway things. And going back to the assist number too, I think the key when Indiana has had point guard play that could score and assist, Indiana gets the most out of their talent under Mike Woodson. Well, tonight you had 9 and 5 and 3. Was it 17 from your 3 guards? They have to look to score, but they also have to look to get people the basketball because you have scorers down low at the 3, 4, and 5 position. And I think that's a good telltale sign that these kids that are playing at the guard position are looking not only just to pad their stats offensively with points, but they're also trying to get teammates involved. I think that's a key thing. Andy, I think you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, kind of ties in with that a little bit. 8 bench points for IU, 6 of those from Galloway, the other 2 from Tucker. Yeah, I think a common refrain that we've had, as many people have talked about, is how many seasons did we come in like, this team's so deep, how are you going to find time to play everybody and all those kinds of things. And And then it turns out not to be that way. I don't think that's going to be that way with this team. I think you're going to have guys step up in different situations over the course of the year, but you want to see that number go up. You want to see them be able to figure out that depth. And I think, again, so much of that goes back to trying to figure out roles on the team and which guys fit well with who and how to maximize the people that you have. Goody goes out, misses some open shots. I know what Ryan said, but I thought he was in the right spots defensively, was active on the glass, got on the floor, really is a guy who's pulling people together and showing some leadership out there. So he's doing a lot of good things other than scoring. There's going to be games they need him to score, though. So want to get that ironed out and kind of figure that out. Galloway was the one who really brought the spark. I think, Tucker was getting in, trying to make things happen and took a lot of shots. So I think that'll come, but that's one thing that you look at early. And for a team that we all think is really talented and has a lot of depth, you'd ideally like to see more than that. I think some of that speaks to being able to play some of these guys and get them some in-game experience that Ryan mentioned earlier as well. So we'll see how that evolves over the course of the non-conference season, but just something, again, to keep an eye on as we try to figure out, the rotation and some of those things.
All right. Coming up on the Assembly Call, we hand out our game balls and Hoosier Hustle Award, discuss a lingering question or two, and look ahead to Indiana's upcoming opponent. That's all next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms, Ryan Phillips, and producer man Eddie behind the scenes. We're breaking down Indiana's win over SIU-Edwardsville by a score of 80-61. It's now time for our game balls, and our game balls are presented by our friends Allie and James at Bloom Environmental. They want to help you protect your home's air quality, and the best way to do that is to stop water at the source. Voted the best of B-Town in basement services for 4 years running, their basement waterproofing and crawl space encapsulation is the best defense your home can have against mold growth and structural damage. Cracks, as Ryan would say. Mention Assembly Call and get 10% off your system. Call today for a free estimate, or if you just want to hear Allie talk about Kurt Signetti for an hour, learn more at www.bloomenviro.com. All right, fellas, it's time for our game balls. We'll start with you, Andy. I think this is kind of easy tonight. Don't want to put pressure on you if you have anything different, but where are you headed with tonight's game ball?
Yeah, this is a nice kind of like the schedule. You want to schedule your early game, your easy games at the beginning. This is about as easy one of these as we're going to get. I think Mgbako will be the unanimous choice and deservedly so, as we talked about before, impacted the game in a lot of different ways. Super efficient, well earned, and well deserved game ball for him.
Ryan.
It's Mackenzie Mgbako for all reasons Andy listed. I don't think we need to belabor it. He deserved that game ball for sure.
And I'm going to make it 3 in a row. That was an outstanding effort by the young man. And it was needed tonight as there was some early game jitters and some struggles on both ends. You have to have a guy who can score and get buckets, and it might be someone else the next night. But Mackenzie Mgbako, congratulations on your first game ball. And now it's time for the Hoosier Hustle Award, sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services.
The Hoosier Real Hustle Award.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, reminding you to check out our friends at Evansville Security Services. Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, Evansville Security Services has been providing off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals since 2001. In other words, they're in the business of prevention and peace of mind. And remember, prevention cannot be measured. To learn more about how Evansville Security Services can help you preserve your peace of mind by preventing bad outcomes, visit evansvillesecurityservices.com. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com.
All right, Ryan, we're going to come back to you for your Hoosier Hustle Award.
I was thinking Trey Galloway, but I think I'm going to give it to Miles Rice. I loved his activity all game. I think he was huge for the team, getting him going. He had 5 turnovers, so I think that kind of clouds your judgment of how he played, but a lot of those were early. He had 2 steals. I just thought his activity on both ends was huge for Indiana. I could see giving it to Gallo, though. I thought he played with a lot of energy too, but I thought Miles Rice stood out to me tonight.
Andy, where are you going?
I think I'm going to go with Galloway. I think Rice is a decent choice, and I honestly gave some thought to Carlisle just for his activity level when he was there on the defensive end. But I'll go with Galloway. I mean, plus 17 in 17 minutes as he works his way back, half the team's assist in that time. I joke with you guys in the chat that Bala needs to go take Trey out to dinner. For helping his stat line look so good and getting him some easy looks. So I'm gonna go with Trey. We'll put it on Coach to split the tie.
I'm not splitting a tie. I got a third one. I mean,
even
that's
better.
a good thing, right? I'm going Carlisle. I know he didn't have a whole lot of stats, but that stance, that's a coach's dream there at the last 2 minutes. I mean, that's a kid who's locking down. It was 27-27. You get up 6, and he just throttled them for 2 minutes. That is so important because halftime momentum, and you're not getting screamed at as much by Coach Woodson. You can come out, and he did the same thing in the second half. And to me, there's a mental hustle tied to Carlisle too, is that he didn't let the lack of scoring or a struggle on the offensive end hurt his defensive effort. And 6 rebounds for a guard. You got to end possessions defensively with the rebound. So we have 3 ways. Chat, it's up to you who you're going to go with. You got Carlisle, you got Rice, and you got Galloway, the 3 guards we talked about earlier. So put your vote in. Producer Eddie, if you can kind of check that and give us something here in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
It's going heavy Trey. I think they're voting for Trey. So Andy, really? They're on your side.
I haven't even seen Coach Marlowe in there to really try to rig the vote. He might be signed in under one of his burners just to try to drum up the vote. But either way,
everyone likes Galloway and everyone likes Andy.
I think you're right about one of those 2 things. I don't know.
They're 60-40 on whether they dislike me 60-40. Ryan, they dislike you 80-40. So I know that's why they kind of going with Galloway tonight because we're on the bottom end of that percentage. Hate to tell you that. All right, it's now time we'll give it, I guess, is it going to be Trey? Yep, producer Eddie says Trey. Thanks, Chat Mob, for picking Andy's guy. But very, very good choice. I think all 3 of them appreciate their hustle tonight. So Trey Galloway is your Hoosier Hustle Award winner on the season opener. Now it's time for lingering questions. I think the lingering question for me is, what are we going to get out of Ballo? I know he had a good point night at the end and got some dunks and really good at rim running, but I thought he did not have a great night tonight, offensively or defensively. I thought the number 34 from SIU really outworked him, rebounding and also attacking at the rim with short drives tonight. So to me, that's a lingering question. Am I off my rocker, Ryan, or
no.
I'm on point? What do you think?
No, I think that his issue is going to be offensive skill level. And how much has he developed in the few months he's been on campus? That's why he came here, was for Mike Woodson to develop him into a more well-rounded player where he's not just rebounds, block shots, and finishing at the rim. And, catching a rebound, putting it back, catching the ball 2 feet from the bucket, rolling to the hoop. He wanted to develop into a skill player offensively. Not at where Malik Renew is skill level, but better. And he saw what they did with Khalil Ware, and he wants that. His level of offensive skill is going to be very telling for this team because Mike Woodson's offense, while they're looking to spread it out, score from the wing, score from the guards this year, it's still predicated on easy points at the rim. That is what this offense is based around. And so Indiana's going to need that from Malik Renew. I think they can feel confident that they'll get that. But they also have to get it from Omar Ballo. And he was top transfer in the nation. A lot of this is expected of him. He's going to need to play better than he did in the first half of the game offensively. He's going to need to play better than he did in the first half of the game defensively as well to move forward. Again, we'll say it. First game of the season. We'll see what happens here. But he has to be better than he was tonight, I think. Scored a lot of points late to pad those stats, come out with 15. That needs to happen early in the game. and it needs to be more consistent and not just based on Trey Galloway finding you on late in the game as you're trying to run up the score.
Yeah, Andy, your thoughts on Ballo?
I think to me it's a little bit of what we talked about with Carlisle, but different, right? Like he's moving into a new situation, and at least my recollection of watching him play at Arizona is he got a lot of his points in the way that he got his points at the end of the game. They put him in pick and roll scenarios, or he would run the floor, get guys sealed early because they would be trying to play fast and figure that out between him and usually another big guy and work on it that way. I thought in the first half they went to him in a lot of like straight post up situations, which again, this is my recollection of watching Arizona play, last season, wasn't necessarily where he did a lot of his damage. I think that speaks to the skill level piece that Ryan talked about. Can he develop that? Absolutely he can. You've seen them be able to do some of those things with Renew as he's developed his game inside in that way. But I think it's twofold. It's trying to figure out how to get him going and how to utilize what he does well while building on top of that. And it seemed like in the first half, it was a little bit more of trying to do things that he hadn't really shown before and then build off of that, versus the second half was kind of taking advantage of the stuff that he already does well. And I think Trey did a really good job of doing that. The other thing that we've seen a lot with some of these guys over the last couple of years is being able to do some of these high-low things, whether it was race and trace, whether it was last year, Malik and Khalil. I think you need guys to be able to step out and shoot a better percentage from three in order to do that. They really kind of clogged some of those things down. They didn't get a lot of those opportunities. He tried to seal somebody and kind of walk them up the lane, get a basket. I think he ended up getting it blocked or losing it or whatever. So yeah, I didn't think it was his best showing by any stretch, but I think it's, again, some of the growing pains of trying to figure out where he fits in, how best to utilize what he does well, and then build on top of that as you go forward. And so hopefully the way he played at the end of the game is a good building block for them as they go forward into game two.
Producer Eddie has a lingering question about Indiana's offensive identity. I think Coach even said something in the postgame, if I saw it right, that they're still trying to figure that out. We saw pace. I like that. Fast break points early. I think you're seeing some new offensive ideas with the high post or the pinch post catch, and they can either go to the strong side and have two guys on each side, or they go to the third side, and that's where Galloway got his three and that kind of action. That's new to Indiana. The question that Ryan brought up earlier is, are we going to shoot more volume threes? Or are we still heavy post? I think the question did not get answered tonight on an identity. Andy, your thoughts on Indiana's offensive identity?
Yeah, I think there's little pieces of lots of things. It seems like so far. You mentioned the pace. We mentioned a little more freedom to shoot threes. You mentioned some different offensive sets. They had a really nice one getting Malik the ball a little bit high the elbow, and I think it was Mgbako had a nice curl to the basket and got a bucket that way. Like, I think there's a lot of things this team can do because of the skill level and because of the talent. I just think they haven't figured out how it all blends together yet. So to me, it's not necessarily a bad thing that that's a work in progress. I don't know how it wouldn't be given the number of new players, but I think what you like is that it does seem different, or there's some experimentation with trying to figure out some different things. And so I think there's enough there to figure it out. And that's what games like this are for, to a certain extent. We talk about wanting to win these games by a lot of points and help the metrics and all that, but it's kind of where you iron out who you are and what that identity is. And so, using the words of the coach, we don't know. But I think they've got a lot of pieces to use to try to figure it out.
And so our next game is Sunday at noon, one of Ryan's favorite tip times, against Eastern Illinois. And we'll come back to you, Andy, for any preview. But I saw Illinois played Eastern Illinois and won 112-67 in the opener. What else can you tell us about the Panthers from Eastern Illinois?
They're the lowest rated team in KenPom that IU plays. Actually, the two teams outside of the top 200 that IU plays are both these first two games, both of which are outside the top 300. So getting the easier games out of the way first should be an easy victory. I think IU-Edwardsville at least picked kind of toward the top of the OVC. Would not say the same about Eastern Illinois, so it should be a game that IU is able to get a lot of guys involved and hopefully pick up a pretty big win.
You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember, check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code HOME23 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Okay, fellas, it's time for our last call. Ryan, your last call, 80-61 season opener. Indiana gets off to a pretty good start. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Indiana did what it needed to do tonight and finish the game with a big win. I mean, the metrics will tell you differently, and they need to be at 24, 25, 26. Okay, fine. It's better than what we saw last year at the beginning of the season. The key now is, how do you move on? How do you improve? How do you shore up the problems you had tonight defensively with rebounding, and then offensively just with having a little bit more flow? They scored 80 points, but there were some times where it got bogged down. It was slow. It didn't really get going. I think that's the key now, is what do you do when you move on to the next game? Do you see progress? And this team needs to show progress in those areas pretty quickly, because Atlantis is coming up, as I said earlier, and they need to be in a pretty good position and feeling pretty good about themselves for that. And then you look at the schedule, and they're playing Big Ten games in a month. And so they do not have time to take months to figure this out and get used to each other and all of that. They need to jump in now and improve now. There is an urgency to this season that we didn't see last season, and it needs to start today.
Did you see the Louisville box score? The number of threes that they took under their new coach, like, they're going to be shooting a boatload. So we got to get that defensive system locked down. Andy, your last call.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you liken this to the football team, we saw a ton of improvement from game 1 to game 2 with the Hoosiers this year. I think you hope to see the same thing with the basketball team, and I think it was a good start. A lot of good things to really reaffirm positive beliefs that you had coming into the season. A few things to clean up, but certainly nothing I saw dampens the enthusiasm for the season and the excitement about the talent that's on this roster. And I think what you see as areas of opportunity are just the growing pains that are going to be presumably inherent from just having so many different players. Now we're having the same conversations a month from now. Perhaps that changes, but I think for now, I think saw enough good things to be excited about. Look for some improvement from game 1 to game 2. Then they take on South Carolina, who lost on opening night at home to a lesser opponent. So that game, a little bit of luster off of that one from a quality win standpoint, but got to perform well in these early season games. I thought it was a better start than what we saw last year. And I think a lot of potential for this team. And so that's what's exciting as we finally get things started.
Someone great once said it's a guards game. And we had 3 guards that I thought played rather well. Had a few cracks, as Ryan said, with the turnovers maybe, but overall it's going to be fun when you have a depth of guards. And Gabe Cupps didn't play a lot, but I trust him to come in and get some minutes too in case he's needed down the line. It's really different from the depth at the guard position that we had before. And so that's going to do it for us tonight here on Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to our Substack at substack.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logo. Thanks to producer Eddie behind the scenes. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU Hoops again with you after the game on Sunday. Until then,
take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
Here I come, Mrs. Stansoni.
I think they've gotten enough show.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
All righty. Thanks, guys.
All right. Appreciate
Eddie.
it.
Later, everybody.
Talk to you Sunday.
We'll see you Sunday.
Bye.